Good morning and welcome once again to Monday Manna. I'm your host, Frank Adams. This is the second um, part of our series on learning to talk so others will listen. Good communication skills is something that a leader must have. I remember a number of years ago, I was sitting on the front row in a church. I believe it was somewhere in the panhandle of Florida, a church I'd never been to before. And of course, the pastor got up to do his preliminaries. And in the midst of his preliminaries, he made this statement. And he said to the people that were gathered there in that Sunday morning service, "You folk remind me of those buzzards that land on my telephone line outside of my house. And when I was drinking coffee this morning and I saw them gathering on that telephone line, it reminded me of you folks." And I thought to myself, sitting on that front row, my friend, today you're preaching for a fool. Immediately after this tirade that he went on, he began to ask the people for a show of hands for those people who would volunteer for Vacation Bible School. Much to his surprise, nobody raised their hands. Anybody with half a brain would know immediately why they did not respond. He was destroying a potential leadership position, and he was destroying it because he did not know how to control his thoughts and his speech, and he was a terrible, terrible communicator. And so we spent the entire day with he and his family and tried to help him. But people that get in that state sometime are just not ready at that moment for help. But hopefully, over the years, he's had to suffer enough because of poor communication that perhaps he's gone and got him some different skills. So we concluded our last lesson and discussing about why people may not be listening to you and why people would actually listen to you. And so you can go back to last week and pick that up if you'd like. While we're talking about communication, let's not forget that one of the first parts and a very important and significant part of speech or communication is learning to listen. And so let me share several types of listening that people employ. Number one, there's what we call a passive listener. This is a listener that basically maintains silence and keeps quiet in the conversation and is listening passively so that they can gather all of the information that is available. In addition to the passive leader, there's what is referred to as the active listener. And that's the listener that listens actively and is offering feedback and is communicating empathy and acceptance and approval in their portion of the conversation. So there's a time for passive listening when you just simply maintain silence and listen attentively but passively to what the folks are saying. And then there's active listening where you are engaged in the process of the communication and you're offering feedback, you're communicating empathy and acceptance. So there's passive listening, active listening, and then the third is perceptive listening. And that perceptive listening is something that we ask the Holy Spirit to help us with so that we might see another dimension in the communication than the words that are being spoken. And so we need to be perceptive. And it's interesting, a lot of times when people come to you, they will usually come with what I call the presenting problem. And the presenting problem is not the real problem, but good listening skills will get you beyond the presenting problem to the real bottom issue that the people are there. A lot of times people will give you a presenting problem to test the waters to see how you're going to react, whether or not it's going to be a safe and equitable environment that they can share the real issue that is close to their soul and their psyche. So we need to be perceptive and allow ourselves to see another dimension, another issue that they might be withholding and seeking for affirmation that it is a safe environment to share that. Then the positive listening is when we listen in order to hear and to understand what the people are saying. Negative listening is when we're waiting, but we're not listening, but we're waiting to give an answer rather than listening to understand. My friend, these are all problems in communication. And then sixthly, there is that defensive listening, um, where we are always defending ourselves or justifying ourselves. And somebody says something and we immediately rise and we become defensive rather than listening. Why can't we just simply say to other individuals, I was wrong, I'm sorry? That'll go a long ways in relationship problems and solving a lot of those relationship and communication problems. And as I've mentioned, when a person starts out talking to you about some bothersome problem, you're generally going to hear only the presenting problem. But good listening skills will help you to move past the presenting problem and get to the core problem. It might be interesting to point out when you're communicating with children, this is a real defense mechanism that they use. They'll give you a presenting problem that has nothing to do with the real issue. And then once they see that it's going to be a safe environment, then they will open up and share with you the actual core problem. Wisdom and communication and listening. Let me offer you just a couple of general statements. Good communication is a dialogue and not a monologue. We as public figures, and particularly those of us who are public communicators, we're really used to a monologue. We're used to standing before people and speaking and being the sole contributor in the conversation. Now, that's fine for public speech, but in these relationships that we're going to have with a contingency of people that we're leading, monologue will not work. My friend, dialogue is the good communication. Secondly, our character will communicate more than the words that we use. People watch our body language, our listening style. They know when we're listening, when we're observing, when we're actually understanding and clearly perceiving what they're saying. That's very important. They want us first in good communication, rather than being understood, seek to understand. Another point is that good communication will diagnose before they prescribe. The Bible talks about an individual who seeks to answer a matter before they hear it, and that person who answers before they actually hear, it is folly and a shame. Proverbs 18:13. If anyone gives an answer before he hears it, it is folly and a shame. So, my friend, remember that we are in the communication business, and it is our responsibility to learn more than putting together a message and talking to people. I know a lot of good communicators in a pulpit that actually their personal interaction and communication skills actually destroys any good that they did in their pulpit ministry. My friend, it's imperative that we learn to seek better communication skills and begin to help people by knowing that we're listening. Peter Drucker, as I mentioned in a previous podcast, he's the father of modern management. And he said 60% of problems in our organization is a communication problem. 60% of our problems can be eliminated if we just learn proper means and methods of communication. 50%, he says, of problems in divorce is a communication problem. Another interesting thing that Peter Drucker pointed out was that 90% of criminals are deficient in communication skills. My friend, it's imperative that we learn to speak and to speak clearly. Someone has made the observation from one of their studies that 90% of all friction in daily life is due to the mere tone of voice that is used. When you are speaking, your words convey thoughts, and the tone of your voice communicates moods, and the tone of our voice communicates whether we're being accepted or rejected, whether we're being understood or not even an effort being made to understand. So people understand a lot. The people that we lead are not ignorant people. They know when a leader is listening. They know when a leader is heard. And my friend, a lot of the issues are resolved if people just understand that you have heard them and that you're clearly perceiving what they are saying. So, good communication begins with dialogue and not a monologue. Our character communicates more than our words. Good communication seeks first to understand, then to be understood. Good communication will diagnose before it prescribes. In other words, good communication makes the effort to listen to be listened rather than to be heard. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 12 Habits of Successful People, said, emphatic listening gets inside another person's frame of mind and reference, and you look out through it, you see the world the way they see it, and then you're able to understand life from their perspective, and then how you can communicate and merge those two perspectives into one and produce unity among other believers and other people within your corporation. My friend, you may be a good communicator, But just getting your thoughts across does not necessarily win you the Good Communication Cup. Good communication is varied in its many aspects, and it is imperative that we as leaders learn and practice good communication skills. Well, that's it for today. God bless you, my friend. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.